Emma Clark stared at the envelope in her trembling hands. The paper was coarse, the handwriting unfamiliar, bold strokes of a man, his hand. Mail was scarce in her small eastern town, especially for a widow living alone. The postmark read, Wolf Canyon, Montana Territory, a place she had never heard of before. Spring sunlight streamed through the threadbare curtains of her modest home as she carefully broke the seal. 3 years had passed since influenza had claimed her husband Thomas, leaving her to navigate life alone at the age of 26. The small seamstress shop where she worked barely provided enough to keep a roof over her head. Dear Miss Clark, the letter began. Emma raised an eyebrow. Whoever this was had not heard she was a widow. My name is James Sullivan. I own the Crossed Arrows Ranch near Wolf Canyon, Montana Territory. I am writing to you upon recommendation of Reverend Howard, who I understand is your cousin, his husband. He spoke highly of your character, kindness, and situation. Emma paused. Reverend Howard was indeed married to her cousin Mary. They had moved west 2 years ago when he accepted a position at a frontier church. She had not heard from him in months. I am a man of 32 years, widowed these past 2 years. I have a prosperous cattle ranch of 500 acres with a good house that stands empty of laughter and care. The territory is growing, and the railroad now connects us to the wider world. She read on, her heart beating faster with each line. I seek a wife to share my life and home. I understand this is an unusual request, but marriage by correspondence is not uncommon in these parts where women are few. Reverend Howard assures me you are a woman of strong constitution and gentle heart. I was told of your experience as a nurse during the latter days of the war, which would be a valuable skill in our community. Emma set the letter down for a moment. Her time as a nurse had been brief but intense, working in a field hospital when she was just 19. Those memories still visited her in dreams, the moans of dying men, the smell of blood and antiseptic, and the small victories when someone survived against the odds. She continued reading, If you find this proposal worthy of consideration, I can provide funds for your journey. The life here is not easy, but it is honest and full of possibility. I cannot promise romance as found in novels, but I can offer respect, partnership, and, I hope, eventual affection. The letter concluded with details of the ranch, the small town nearby, and a daguerreotype of a stern-faced man with kind eyes standing before a sturdy 2-story house. His beard was neatly trimmed, his stance confident but not imposing. Emma placed the letter on her worn kitchen table and walked to the window. Outside, the familiar sight of the cobbler, his shop, the mercantile, and the same dusty street she had known all her life stretched before her. Each day blended into the next here, a slow waiting for nothing in particular. Emma, are you home? The voice of her friend Sarah broke through her thoughts. The door opened, and Sarah bustled in, her arms full of fabric for mending. You will not believe what Mrs. Peterson wants now. Sarah stopped mid-sentence when she saw Emma's expression. What is it? You look as though you have seen a ghost. Not a ghost, Emma replied, handing over the letter. A proposal, of sorts. Sarah's eyes widened as she read. Montana Territory. Why? That might as well be another world. A world I know nothing about, Emma agreed, taking back the letter. But what will you do here? Sarah asked gently. The seamstress shop cannot keep you forever, and your savings must be nearly gone. Emma sighed. It was true. Each month was a struggle, and winter had been particularly hard. I treated men with terrible wounds during the war. I helped birth babies in this town. I buried my husband and survived. Yet the thought of traveling to marry a stranger terrifies me. Sarah took her hands. It should terrify you. It is terrifying, but perhaps also an opportunity. Mary would not have let her husband recommend you to someone unworthy. That evening, Emma read the letter again by lamplight. She thought of the empty years stretching ahead of her here, the pitying glances from townsfolk, the dwindling opportunities. She thought of her medical skills going unused except for the occasional neighbor, a sprained ankle or feverish child. What would you think, Thomas? She whispered to the silence. Her late husband had been adventurous, always dreaming of seeing more of the country. He would have urged her to go, she knew. As dawn broke, Emma had made her decision. She dipped her pen in ink and began her reply. Dear Mr. Sullivan, I am in receipt of your letter and have given it careful consideration. I am indeed a widow, not a miss, having lost my husband 3 years ago. Life here offers little prospect, and your proposal, while unexpected, presents an opportunity I find myself willing to explore. 2 weeks later, Emma stood on the train platform, a ticket to Montana Territory in her hand and everything she owned in 2 modest trunks. Sarah hugged her fiercely. "Write to me. Tell me everything," Sarah insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I will," Emma promised. "And if it is all terrible, I shall simply come back." But as the train pulled away from the station, whistle blowing and steam billowing, Emma knew in her heart she would not return. For better or worse, she was moving forward into a new life. The letter from James Sullivan was tucked safely in her reticule, a letter of hope. The train swayed rhythmically as it carved its way westward through the changing American landscape. Emma sat by the window, watching as lush eastern forests gradually gave way to vast, rolling plains. 4 days had passed since she had left everything familiar behind, and each mile of track took her further into uncertainty. She opened her journal and recorded the date, May 12, 1882, then continued her observations of the journey. The Missouri River had been crossed yesterday, its mighty waters a boundary between her old life and whatever awaited her. The enormity of her decision still startled her at times. First time heading west? The question came from an elderly woman who occupied the seat across from Emma. Her face was weathered like tanned leather, but her eyes sparkled with vitality. "Yes," Emma replied, closing her journal. "My first time leaving Pennsylvania." In fact, the woman nodded knowingly. "I can always spot the newcomers. You have that look, half wonder, half terror." She extended a work-worn hand. "Martha Blackwood." "Emma Clark," she responded, taking the offered hand. "Soon to be Sullivan, possibly." Martha, as eyebrows rose. "Ah, a mail-order bride. I suspected as much. Traveling alone with such determination usually means a woman is heading toward something specific, or running from something worse." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those who have walked the same path," Martha said with a gentle smile. "I came west in '59 as a mail-order bride myself. My Henry had a small claim near Denver. Wrote me the most beautiful letters." "And did it work out well?" Emma asked hesitantly. Martha, his eyes grew distant. 30 years together before the consumption took him 3 winters ago. It was not always easy, the winters brutal, the work endless, but I never regretted my decision for a moment." The train whistle pierced the air as they approached another small station. Through the window, Emma could see a dusty main street with wooden buildings, not unlike countless others they had passed. "The territories change you," Martha continued after the train resumed its journey. "They strip away pretense. Out here, a person is judged by their mettle, not their manners." Emma thought about James Sullivan's letter, now worn at the creases from countless readings. His words had been straightforward, lacking flowery sentiments but conveying honest intentions. Would the man match his correspondence? "What if he is disappointed when he sees me?" Emma voiced her deepest fear. Martha studied her for a moment. "Then he would be a fool. But prepare yourself. The man you meet might not match the one you have imagined either. The important question is whether you can build something together from who you truly are, not who you wished each other to be." As the day progressed into evening, the vast landscape outside turned golden under the setting sun. The endless prairie spread to the horizon like an ocean of grass, occasionally broken by the silhouette of a distant butte or a lonely homestead. "We should reach Cheyenne by morning," the conductor announced as he passed through their car. 30-minute stop for those continuing west. Emma consulted her itinerary. From Cheyenne, she would board the northern spur line that would take her closer to her destination. According to James's instructions, Wolf Canyon was still a day-and-a-half journey away. That night, sleep eluded her as the train clattered through the darkness. The closer she got to Montana Territory, the more questions filled her mind. What if James Sullivan was cruel behind his respectful words? What if life on a cattle ranch was more than she could bear? What if she failed at being the partner he expected? Morning brought the bustling activity of Cheyenne, a frontier town transformed by the railroad into a vital hub. During the brief stop, Emma stood on the platform, stretching her legs and observing the mix of people: cowboys with jingling spurs, businessmen in dusty suits, families with all their possessions loaded on wagons, ready to seek their fortunes further west. "Your journey is almost over, my dear," Martha said as they prepared to board different trains. "Remember, the West forgives many flaws, but it never forgives weakness. Find your strength, even when you feel you have none left." The women embraced. An unexpected friendship formed in transit, unlikely to be renewed. Emma watched Martha's train depart before boarding her own connection northward. The landscape grew more dramatic as they traveled, great expanses of sagebrush desert giving way to distant, snow-capped mountains. The air was different here. Clearer, drier, carrying scents of pine and sage rather than the dampness of the east. On the final leg of her journey, Emma shared a coach with a cattle buyer, a young missionary couple, and a gruff man who claimed to be a prospector. Their stories of life in the territories both fascinated and frightened her. Tales of harsh winters, Indian troubles in the north, cattle thieves, and the isolated months when travel became impossible. Wolf Canyon, the conductor called out late the following afternoon. Wolf Canyon Station. Emma gathered her belongings with trembling hands. This small, wooden platform beside a cluster of buildings was her destination. Through the window, she could see a dusty main street with a general store, a saloon, what appeared to be a small hotel, and scattered businesses. Nothing like the eastern town she had left behind. With her heart pounding, she descended the steps to the platform, expecting to see a man matching the daguerreotype, tall, bearded, solemn-eyed James Sullivan waiting to claim his mail-order bride. The platform was empty save for a station master unloading mail sacks and a young boy selling newspapers. "Excuse me," Emma approached the station master after several minutes of anxious waiting. "I am expecting to be met by Mr. James Sullivan of the Crossed Arrows Ranch. Has he been delayed?" "Perhaps." The station master looked up from his ledger, studying her city clothes and nervous expression. "Sullivan has not been into town for nearly a week. But, last I heard, there was some trouble out at his place." Emma's stomach tightened. "Trouble? What sort of trouble?" "Cannot say for certain. Word came in about a fire, but details are scarce. Ranches are scattered wide out here, and news travels slow." The missionary woman who had shared Emma's coach approached, having overheard the conversation. "You cannot remain here alone, Mrs. Clark. Perhaps we could help you find accommodation until Mr. Sullivan arrives?" Emma looked down the empty road leading out of town, then back at the small settlement. The sun was already lowering toward the mountains. Night would come soon, thank you. "But no," she said with sudden resolve, surprising herself. "I have come too far to wait passively now. Is there someone who might take me to the Crossed Arrows Ranch today?" The station master scratched his beard. "Hank at the livery might drive you out there. For a price. It is a good 2 hours by wagon, rough country." Emma squared her shoulders. If there was trouble at the ranch, if James Sullivan was in difficulty, then perhaps her nursing skills would be needed more than her presence as a prospective bride. "Then please direct me to Hank in his livery," she said firmly. "I did not travel across half a continent to falter at the final miles." As she collected her trunks and followed the station master's directions, Emma felt a strange calm replace her anxiety. For better or worse, her new life was about to begin, not with the anticipated meeting of her future husband, but with an unexpected challenge that would test the very qualities that had brought her west in the first place. The wagon lurched over another rut in the rough trail, causing Emma to grip the wooden seat tightly. Hank, the livery stable owner, had warned her the journey would be uncomfortable, but she had insisted on leaving immediately. Now, as the sun dipped lower toward the mountain horizon, she questioned the wisdom of her haste. "Most ladies would have stayed at the hotel," Hank commented. He was a weathered man in his 50s with a drooping mustache and calloused hands that handled the reins expertly. "Especially hearing about trouble." "I am not most ladies," Emma replied. "And if there is trouble, my nursing skills might be needed." The landscape was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. Vast stretches of sage-dotted hills and distant pine forests clinging to mountainsides. Beautiful but unforgiving. "What exactly did you hear about the fire?" she asked. "Bert Johnson rode through yesterday saying he saw smoke from the Crossed Arrows. Ranch fires can be devastating out here. No fire brigade to call upon." Emma nodded, her worry growing. What if James Sullivan was injured? What if the home he had described in his letters was now reduced to ashes? "There," Hank said, pointing toward a rise ahead. "You can see the ranch from that ridge." As they crested the hill, Emma caught her first glimpse of the Crossed Arrows Ranch spread in the valley below. She could see it was a substantial property with a large main house, several outbuildings, and fenced pastures. Relief washed over her as she noted the house appeared intact, but her relief was short-lived. As they drew closer, she saw a large barn at the far side of the property with smoke still rising from its partially collapsed roof. Several men moved around it, the scene chaotic even from a distance. The wagon rattled toward the ranch entrance, marked by a wooden arch bearing a brand of 2 crossed arrows. Emma could smell the acrid scent of smoke and wet ash. The yard was churned with hoof prints and boot tracks, evidence of a frantic response to the fire. A tall man emerged from behind the house, leading a soot-covered horse. He stopped at the sight of the wagon, his expression shifting from exhaustion to confusion. Emma knew immediately it was James Sullivan. The daguerreotype had captured his strong features but failed to convey his imposing presence. Even disheveled from fighting the fire, he carried himself with undeniable authority. "Sullivan," Hank called out, "brought you something from town. Or rather, someone." James approached slowly, his gaze fixed on Emma with an intensity that made her heart quicken. His shirt was torn and smoke-stained, his face smudged with soot, and a makeshift bandage wrapped around his left forearm. "Mrs. Clark?" he asked, his voice deeper than she had imagined. Emma nodded. "Mr. Sullivan, I see I have arrived at an inopportune moment. The train. I completely forgot in all this chaos." He gestured toward the smoldering barn. "Lightning strike last night. We have been fighting the fire since." Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched in his face and what appeared to be a serious burn beneath the crude bandage. Before James could say more, a shout came from the damaged barn. "Sullivan, the north wall is shifting!" James turned sharply. "I have to go. Fletcher," he called to a young ranch hand, "show Mrs. Clark to the house and help with her trunks." With that, he was gone, striding quickly back toward the danger. Fletcher, a boy who could not be more than 16, looked at Emma with curiosity. "You the mail-order bride from back east? Boss has been fixing up the house for weeks." "I am Mrs. Clark," she replied with dignity. "And rather than going to the house, I would prefer you take me to where I might be of assistance." "I was a nurse during the war," Emma explained, already reaching for her medical bag. "Your employer appears injured, as might others be. I did not come all this way to sit idle while there is work to be done." Moments later, Emma was striding toward the heart of the activity, her skirts gathered up to avoid the mud and debris. The scene at the barn was worse than it had appeared from a distance. Half the structure had collapsed, and men worked to salvage what they could while others fought to keep the flames from spreading. Emma spotted James directing the efforts, his injured arm held awkwardly at his side. Without hesitation, she approached him. "Mr. Sullivan," she called firmly, "that burn requires immediate attention." He turned, surprise evident in his expression. "Mrs. Clark, you should not be here. This is no place for a woman," she finished. "Perhaps not, but it is precisely the place for someone with medical training. That bandage is filthy, and untreated burns invite infection." For a moment, they stood facing each other, two strangers connected by nothing more than words on paper, now meeting under the worst possible circumstances. Instead of dismissing her, James's stern expression softened slightly. "We have 3 more men with burns and cuts." Hank Bowman caught a falling beam across his shoulder. Emma nodded briskly. "I need clean water, any alcohol you have, clean cloths, and a place to work." She spotted a covered wagon near the corral. "That will serve as a treatment area." To her surprise, James immediately barked orders to nearby ranch hands. Within minutes, Emma had established a makeshift medical station and was attending to the injured men. As the evening wore on, Emma lost track of time. She cleaned wounds, applied salves, bandaged burns, and instructed the injured on care to prevent infection. The men were initially hesitant to be treated by a woman, but pain quickly overcame their reservations. James Sullivan was her last patient. By then, the fire had been contained. He sat stiffly on a crate as she unwrapped his crude bandage. "This should have been treated hours ago," she chided, examining the angry red burn that extended from his wrist halfway up his forearm. "There were more pressing concerns," he replied simply. Emma cleaned the burn carefully, aware of his eyes on her face. "You risk your livelihood if this becomes infected. A rancher needs both hands." "A rancher needs his ranch more," James answered. "Everything I have is here." As she wrapped clean bandages around his arm, Emma finally allowed herself to truly look at the man she had traveled so far to meet. Beyond the soot and exhaustion, she could see intelligence in his eyes and character in the lines of his face. "This is hardly the welcome I intended," he said quietly. "I had planned to meet you at the station with the good wagon. There would have been a proper dinner waiting." Emma smiled slightly. "Life rarely follows our careful plans, Mr. Sullivan." A ranch hand approached with news about the horses, interrupting their moment of connection. James stood, towering over Emma, and for the first time, She saw uncertainty in his expression. "We must discuss our arrangement," he said, "but it must wait until morning. You must be exhausted from your journey." Emma nodded, suddenly aware of her own fatigue. As she collected her medical supplies, she glanced back at the smoldering remains of the barn and then at the men she had treated, men who now looked at her with newfound respect. She had arrived as a mail-order bride, an unknown quantity from the East. But as she followed Mrs. Hannity toward the main house, Emma realized she had already staked a claim here, not through marriage, but through competence and courage in the face of crisis. Whether James Sullivan still wanted her as a wife remained to be seen. But she had proven herself useful in this harsh landscape, and on the frontier, that counted for more than any letter of introduction. Emma woke to unfamiliar sounds: cattle lowing, roosters crowing, and activity outside. Memory returned: the journey, the fire, and James Sullivan with his burned arm. The room held simple but sturdy furniture: a bed with a wooden headboard, a dresser, washstand, and writing desk. Her trunk stood beside the wall. Mrs. Hannity, a stout woman with gray hair and a severe bun, brought hot water. "Mr. Sullivan asked that you join him in his study when you were ready." After dressing in a practical blue cotton dress, Emma made her way downstairs. A young woman emerged from the dining room with empty dishes. "I am Lily. Mr. Sullivan is in there." She nodded toward a door at the end of the hall. "Are you Mrs. Hannity, his daughter?" Emma asked. "No, I am. Just help in the kitchen since my pa died in the mining accident." Boss. The term struck Emma as odd for the man she had come to marry, yet it fit the relationship she observed. Respect based on competence rather than authority. She knocked, and a deep voice bade her enter. The room had bookshelves lining the walls and a desk covered with ledgers. James stood as she entered. In daylight, she saw him clearly: tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face. His dark hair and beard were neatly trimmed. "Mrs. Clark, I trust you rested well." "Yes, thank you. The room is most comfortable." "Please, sit. I must apologize for yesterday, the circumstances." "There is no need. Emergencies dictate their own terms." A hint of a smile appeared. "The men you treated are most grateful." "Any nurse would have done the same," Emma demurred. "But not every woman would have stepped forward amid chaos." He leaned forward. "You are not what I expected." "Is that disappointing?" "Quite the opposite. But it changes our situation." He moved to the window. "When I wrote to you, I sought a wife to manage a household. I did not expect such capability beyond domestic matters. The hands respect you already, rare for a newcomer from the East. I think we should reconsider our arrangement." Emma tensed. "You wish me to return East?" "No, not at all. I suggest we approach this differently. Stay as a guest for 1 month. Then, if we both agree, we could proceed with marriage. And if either decides against it, I would provide funds for your return journey, plus compensation." Emma nodded. 1 month to determine our compatibility. Good. Now, the fire did more damage than just the barn. We lost hay stores, and horses were injured. The ranch faces difficulties. Is your position secure? For now, but it requires careful management. This is not a life of ease. I never expected it would be. Few lives worth living are easy. A genuine smile transformed his features. You truly are not what I expected. Over breakfast, James outlined the ranch routines. What would my responsibilities be during this trial period? Emma asked. Would you serve as our medical resource? We often face accidents with no doctor nearby. Emma felt a surge of purpose. I would be glad to. I can handle most common ailments and injuries. After breakfast, James showed her the ranch. We run about 500 cattle, mostly Herefords. Do you not get lonely out here? She asked. Sometimes, especially in winter. It is one reason I sought a wife. He glanced at her. My first marriage was arranged similarly. What happened to her? Pain flickered across his face. Childbirth fever. 2 years ago, we lost both Grace and the baby. I am very sorry for your loss, Emma said softly. By midday, Emma's head was spinning with new information. Over lunch, her suggestion about better ventilation for hay storage was met with thoughtful consideration. The afternoon brought her first patients. James had set aside a small room with good light for her work. That evening, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. It is beautiful here, Emma said. It can be harsh as well. This land gives nothing easily. Few things of value come easily, she observed. He glanced at her with appreciation. You have a philosopher's mind, Mrs. Clark. Emma, she said, if we are to spend a month determining our compatibility, Perhaps you should use my given name. Emma, he repeated. Then you must call me James. Tomorrow I must check the north pasture. Would you accompany me? I would like that, though I am not an accomplished rider. We have a gentle mare for you. He winced as he moved his arm. I should change this bandage. Allow me, Emma offered. Inside, she carefully tended his burn. As she worked, she was aware of James watching her with an intensity that quickened her pulse. Thank you, he said softly. You have already brought positive change here. That night, Emma reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. A week ago, she had been a lonely widow. Now she was at the frontier, her future full of possibilities. The letter that had brought her here had indeed been a letter of hope. 3 weeks had passed since Emma's arrival at Crossed Arrows Ranch. The scorched remains of the barn had been cleared away, and a new structure was rising against the Montana sky. Similarly, something new was growing between Emma and James, a quiet understanding built on shared work and mutual respect. Emma had settled into a rhythm at the ranch. She spent mornings learning household management from Mrs. Hannity, afternoons tending to medical needs, and evenings on the porch with James, discussing the day, his events. This morning, Emma was organizing her small medical room when Fletcher, the young ranch hand, appeared at the door. Miss Emma, rider coming. Looks like Mr. Hargrove from the bank. Emma nodded her thanks. James had mentioned Hargrove several times, the Wolf Canyon banker who held the notes on a loan James had taken to expand the ranch, his cattle herd. The fire had complicated their financial situation, and James had ridden into town yesterday to discuss terms. She made her way to the front of the house as a portly man in a city suit dismounted from a fine horse. His face was flushed from the ride, and despite the dust of travel, he maintained an air of self-importance. Mrs. Clark, I presume? He asked, removing his hat. I am Walter Hargrove of the First Bank of Wolf Canyon. I was hoping to find Mr. Sullivan at home. He's checking the North Ridge. We expect him back for the noon meal. Mrs. Hannity provided coffee in the parlor, and Emma made polite conversation, though Hargrove's manner made her uncomfortable. He spoke of the town, its growth and new mining interests in the region, all with an undercurrent of self-congratulation. I must say, Mrs. Clark, you are not what one expects in a mail-order bride, he commented. Most women who come west under such arrangements are less refined. Emma kept her expression neutral. I am not yet Mr. Sullivan, Miss Bride, sir. We have agreed to a period of acquaintance before making our final decision. Hargrove's eyebrows rose. Indeed, though I wonder if such caution is wise for Sullivan, given his circumstances. His circumstances? Emma prompted. My dear lady, surely you are aware that Crossed Arrows faces significant financial challenges? He lowered his voice. The loan payments were already stretching Sullivan's resources before this unfortunate fire. Now, with the loss of the barn and winter feed, I fear my bank, its directors may have to foreclose if suitable arrangements cannot be made. Emma felt a chill. Mr. Sullivan is a resourceful man. The ranch is valuable land, Hargrove corrected, which could be put to more profitable use. The Transcontinental Mining Company has expressed interest in the water rights alone. Before Emma could respond, they heard horses in the yard. James entered with a nod to Emma before addressing the banker. Hargrove, I did not expect to see you again so soon. I thought it best to view the property myself, given the circumstances. The banker rose. Perhaps we could speak privately? After nearly an hour, the study door opened. Voices carried down the hallway. Hargrove, as smug, James, as terse with barely controlled anger. Consider my offer, Sullivan. You have until the 1st of June. After that, I cannot guarantee the bank is patience. Emma found James in the study, standing by the window with tension evident in every line of his body. You heard? He asked. Some, she admitted. He mentioned foreclosure. James sank into his chair. The fire could not have come at a worse time. The loan payment is due next month, and with the costs of rebuilding. What did he offer? An extension, at double the interest rate. Or I could sell him the North Ridge property outright. He claims it is for a railroad spur, but I know he is acting for the mining company. And if you refuse both options, then we have until June 1st before the bank calls in the full loan. I should have told you the full extent of our difficulties sooner. How much is needed to make the payment? $2,000 would cover the immediate payment and give us breathing room until the fall cattle sale. Emma was silent for a moment. I have $800, she said finally. The money from selling my house. James looked up sharply. I cannot accept your money, Emma. It is your security. It is my choice, she countered. I believe in what you are building here. Even with your generous offer, we would still be short, he said quietly. What about my medical skills? She asked. Wolf Canyon has no doctor, only one who visits monthly. What if I were to offer my services as a nurse for a fee? James considered this. It could help. Your reputation has already spread after you treated the men during the fire. And the cattle drive this fall? You mentioned it requires hiring additional men. Could we manage with fewer? James repeated, a smile tugging at his mouth. Emma felt color rise in her cheeks. I have been practicing with Willow. I believe I could help with simple tasks. James joined her at the window. You continue to surprise me, Emma Clark. Most women would be planning their departure upon hearing such news. Perhaps I see what this place could be, she replied. Not just a ranch, but a true home. And perhaps, she hesitated, perhaps I also see what we could be together. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. James reached for her hand. We still have a week left of our agreed-upon month, but I find I no longer need that time to know my mind. Emma's heart quickened. Nor I. Then perhaps, James began, but was interrupted by a commotion outside. A wagon was pulling into the yard, driven by a neighboring rancher. In the back lay a figure covered with a blanket, and a woman was holding the form steady. Pete Johnson was calling for help. Sullivan, there has been an accident. My boy Tommy fell from the hayloft. Arm is broken bad. Bone is through the skin. We heard you had a nurse staying here. The boy was pale and sweating, his arm awkwardly splinted with strips of wood and cloth that couldn't hide the severity of the compound fracture. Bring him inside, Emma directed. Fletcher, tell Mrs. Hannity to boil water and bring clean linens to my medical room. Within minutes, the boy was laid on the examination table. Emma carefully removed the makeshift splint and assessed the break. I need to set this bone and close the wound, she explained to Mrs. Johnson. It will be painful for Tommy, but it must be done. Can you do it? Mrs. Johnson asked, her voice tight with fear. I have set broken bones before, during the war, Emma assured her. James, I will need your help to hold him steady. The next hour tested every skill Emma had learned as a field nurse. When the bone was finally set, the wound cleaned and sutured, and a proper splint applied, Tommy fell into an exhausted sleep. He will need careful watching for infection, Emma told the Johnsons afterward. I would like to check it in 3 days. We cannot thank you enough, Pete Johnson said fervently. The doctor in Helena wanted $50 last time he set a break for the miller's girl. Emma exchanged a glance with James, an idea forming. I would be willing to provide medical care for your family and others in the area for more modest fees. Perhaps a system of payment in goods or services when cash is scarce. Pete looked interested. Like a circuit nurse? That would be a blessing to families around here. After the Johnsons departed, Emma and James returned to the porch. You were remarkable with that boy, James said quietly. What Pete said about the doctor, his fees, $50 for setting a simple fracture. If I charged even half that for more serious procedures. He nodded. A circuit nurse serving the ranches could earn a steady income. There are at least 20 families within a day. That's right. Combined with your savings and our economizing measures for the ranch, we might meet the payment deadline. Emma finished. The next week passed in a flurry of activity. Emma rode with James to visit several neighboring ranches, offering her medical services. The response was enthusiastic, and within days Emma had treated a ranch hand, infected cut, a homesteader, wife, cough, and a child, festering splinter, earning a combination of cash and traded goods. On the morning of their 1-month anniversary, Emma woke early. Mrs. Hannity informed her that James had ridden to town at dawn but would return by midday. Shortly after noon, she heard a horse approaching. James rode in, his expression unreadable as he dismounted. Emma, he called, striding toward her. I have news. From Hargrove? Yes and no. A smile broke across his face. Before I could present our proposal, he informed me that the bank has been bought by a larger institution in Helena. All outstanding loans are being reviewed, and extensions have been granted for 6 months. 6 months? Emma repeated. It gives us until after the cattle sale, when we will have ample funds to make the payment. He took her hands in his. The ranch is safe, Emma. That is wonderful news, James. There is more. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box containing a simple gold band. Emma Clark, this month has shown me that you are the woman I want beside me for all the days to come. Will you marry me? Not out of necessity, but because together we are stronger than apart. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, I will marry you, James Sullivan. Later that evening, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. Emma wore James' ring, and their future stretched before them with newfound security. When shall we be married? She asked. Reverend Howard, your cousin's husband, will be passing through Wolf Canyon next month. I sent word asking if he would perform the ceremony. And the ranch? With the extension on the loan, what will we do with the money we raised? Perhaps we could expand your medical room, create a proper infirmary for the area? I would like that, Emma said warmly. And perhaps, in time, we might think about a room for a child. The ranch spread before them, bathed in golden light, no longer merely a property to be managed, but a true home to be cherished. From the ashes of the burned barn, a stronger structure had risen. Similarly, from the embers of past losses, Emma and James had forged a bond that promised not just survival, but a future filled with purpose and love. The letter that had brought Emma west had indeed been a letter of hope. Hope that had been tested by fire, strengthened through challenge, and ultimately rewarded with the most precious gift of all, a second chance at happiness for two people who had learned that the truest wealth lay not in what they possessed, but in what they built together.